Pastor Gavin Whitcomb here from Moores Mountain Church. Welcome to the Boiling Point podcast in connection with Pastor Gavin Productions. And we're going to continue our series here on Old Testament survey. So at this time, we're going to look at the book of Numbers. And so just a general overall view of the book of Numbers. So the theme of Numbers, it's called Numbers because the children of Israel left Egypt and they're ready to go into the land of Canaan, the land that God was going to give them. So they had to number the soldiers who were, of fighting age. So in chapter 1, it says, take the sum of the congregation of the children of Israel, every male by their polls from 20 years old and upward, all that are able to go forth to war. Thou and Aaron shall number them by their armies. So that's where the word, where the name Numbers comes from. Now, the theme of the book of Numbers, or its purpose, is to complete the account of Israel's journey from Egypt to Canaan. And so basically it answers a question: what happened to the children of Israel after they left Egypt? In the wilderness, and after God gave them the law. So this kind of fills in some of their history. So in chapter 1 through 10, Israel prepares to leave Sinai for Canaan. And then the chapter 10 through 19 records the journey from Mount Sinai to Kadesh Barnea. And then chapter 20 through 25, the wilderness wanderings from Kadesh to the plains of Moab. Then chapters 26 through 31, they're preparing to enter Canaan. And then chapters 32 through 36, Israel occupies land east of the Jordan River. Now let me just fill you in on a little bit of the history here. God delivered Israel from Egypt, and so they left Egypt, and God was going to give them the land that he had promised to give to Abraham and Isaac and to Jacob. And remember, Jacob's name was changed to Israel. So Jacob, or Israel, had 12 sons. So each one of those 12 sons became the progenitors of each of the tribes of Israel. So God promised to Abraham that he would give that land to him and to his descendants. So now we're reading about in Numbers the period of history where God is about to fulfill that promise. Now, some might question the ethics of this, like, okay, is it right for them to go to war and go against the Canaanites and take the land? Well, yes, for several reasons. Okay, one reason is the earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof, right? So God owns everything. So if God wants to give that land to his people, he has every right to do so. And who has a right to question what God does? But there's another aspect to this, and that's that the inhabitants of the land, the Canaanites, were very wicked, ungodly people. And it's the way that things go on the earth. Sometimes when cultures and civilizations are very wicked and ungodly, God allows their enemies to conquer them and to bring judgment against them in that way. So, we read about the Canaanites. They were pagan, idolatrous worshipers. They would take their babies and offer them as sacrifices to their gods, kill their babies to offer them to these pagan gods. Sexual perversion was rampant. Some of the same sort of things we're seeing in our day and age, only worse. And they also were involved in in demonic things like witchcraft and sorcery and that sort of thing. So they were a very wicked, evil, decadent population, the Canaanites. So God was, it's the way things are on earth. God was going to fulfill his promise to give the land to the children of Israel, his people, and he would also use the children of Israel as an instrument of judgment against a wicked, very depraved, godless, evil civilization. So they were the Canaanites. So the children of Israel were delivered from Egypt. Remember, God opened the Red Sea and delivered them. And so the Exodus, God's miraculous deliverance of the children of Israel from Egypt, that was the key historical event in the Old Testament at this point in time. Kind of like the cross is the key historical event in the New Testament. So, what happened after they left Egypt and were in the wilderness on the way to the land of Canaan? Well, they were to number their armies, and in chapter 13, they got to the edge of the land of Canaan, and so they sent spies in to spy out the land. So there were 12 tribes, so they sent one man from each tribe, a total of 12 spies. So they went to spy out the land and to check it out. And at that time, there were a lot of, the Bible tells us, giants, the sons of Anak, which come of the giants. And so they noticed the giants in the land. And so 10 of the spies responded with doubt and unbelief. They said, the land through which we have gone to search it is a land that eateth up the inhabitants thereof, and all the people that we saw in it are men of great stature. They were huge. And there we saw the giants, the sons of Anak, which came of the giants, and we were in our own sight as grasshoppers, and so we were in their sight. Okay, so that's what 10 of the spies said. Man, no way can we take this land. But two of the spies, Joshua and Caleb, expressed faith in God and said, hey, we can do this. It says Caleb, this is in chapter 13, Caleb stilled the people before Moses and said, let us go up at once and possess it, for we are well able to overcome it. But, the men that went up with him said, we're not able to go up against the people. They're stronger than we are. So they brought up an evil report of the land. So guess who the people followed? The 10 spies that expressed unbelief and doubt. And so the children of Israel began to murmur against Moses. And so God judged the people for their unbelief. And so as a result of it, they spent 40 days spying out the land. And so God said, because of your unbelief, you're not going into the land. This generation your carcasses are going to die in the wilderness. And the next generation that comes up, they'll go into the land. And the only two then of this generation here that eventually went into the land of Canaan was Joshua and Caleb. The Lord rewarded them for their faith. And so they were to wander in the wilderness each year for each day that they went in to spy out the land. So it was 40 days. So for 40 years, they would wander in the wilderness. So they thought, well, oh man, we've sinned, so we're going to go and take the land. And so they tried to, and their attack was unsuccessful, and the Canaanites and the Amalekites came after them, and the Bible says discomfited them. So God wasn't with them in terms of allowing them to conquer the land because they didn't believe. And, there are people that they hear the gospel of Christ and they could enter into God's kingdom and become a part of God's people and experience the blessings of God, but they don't believe. And a lot of people, they mess around and then they finally miss out on it. And one day it's too late. They die and they never made their peace with God. So enter into God's blessings right now and have faith in God. Don't draw back because of unbelief. That's one of the lessons there. So the people were really bummed, and they murmured and they complained through their wilderness wanderings. There's one time where Aaron and Miriam spoke against Moses, and so there's a rebellion against Moses, and the people murmured, and they complained. And in chapter 21, there's a place where they complained to Moses. And so God sent a plague of poisonous snakes among them. The people were dying. Now, some people wonder about this. Well, isn't that kind of mean of God? But what you have to remember is that the way that they complained and spoke against God was blasphemy. Think of all the miracles that they'd seen. They saw God bring the plagues over Egypt, and then God delivered them miraculously by bringing them through the Red Sea, destroying Pharaoh's army. And God had been feeding them with manna from heaven. And in spite of these miraculous displays of God's power, they murmured and complained. So it was blasphemy. So so there were these poisonous snakes, and a lot of people were getting bitten and dying. So they cried out to Moses. So God said to Moses, Moses, here's what I want you to do. Make a snake out of brass, put it on a pole, hold that snake up, and whoever looks at the snake will live. So if you look at the serpent, you'll live. And so that's an illustration, because Jesus said to Nicodemus in John 3, as Moses lifted up the serpent in the wilderness, and whoever looked would live, even so must the Son of Man be lifted up, that whosoever believeth in him should not perish, but have everlasting life. So Jesus was lifted up on the cross. You and I have been bitten by sin. We're under the wages of sin is death. Without Christ, we're going to die eternally. But if we look to him, we'll live. And so now in later on, then, as we look at their wilderness from Kadesh Barnea to the plains of Moab, there's an incident where the Balaam, king of Balak, the king of Moab, he hires a man named Balaam to curse the people of Israel. But when he goes to curse them, the Lord takes a hold of his mouth, and he actually blesses the people. But he makes a few attempts and is unsuccessful. So what he does, though, is that Balaam says to Balak, the king of Moab, the only way that, I can't curse them. The only way that you could even harm the children of Israel, because God's with them, is if you can get them to participate in your idolatrous worship. And so that's what Balak did. He sent, the women who were devotees of their false gods to go down and to seduce the men of Israel. And in so doing, there was a sin there. Israel joined Baal Peor and joined in idolatry. So it really, there were some bad things that the children of Israel did. They murmured, they complained, they sinned against God. And it just shows that this is a true and a factual account of what really happened. If it were a fake account, the writer would tend to say, oh, they were really good people and very noble people. But it shows how the children of Israel responded, their bad decisions, and their ungratefulness, their unfaithfulness, but yet God was still very gracious with them. So then that generation dies out, and a new generation arises, and so they number the people, and there were over 600,000 men who were able to go forth to war. So that was about the size of their army, more than 500,000 men. So they wanted to go through some territory of the Amorites. And there were two kings, Sihon and Og, who would not allow Israel to pass through their territory. So the Lord directs Israel to attack them and to take their land. And so Israel conquered the land that was east of the Jordan River. And so there were two tribes, Reuben and Gad, and the half tribe of Manasseh, who said, hey, we got flocks and herds. We like it over here. We'll just take this land here. We're content to live here. And Moses says, shall your brethren go to war and you sit idle? That wouldn't be right. You guys need to go and help fight with your brethren. And so they made a deal. Okay, we'll go and fight with our brethren, and then after the fighting's over and the land is conquered, we'll come back and we'll live here east of the Jordan River. And so Moses said, all right, but if you don't do that, you will sin against the Lord, and be sure your sin will find you out. And that's a very familiar verse. Sin has a way of catching up to us. So that's where that comes from, the book of Numbers. So finally, they conquered the land east of the Jordan River. And so that's basically a summary of the book of Numbers. So now they're ready. They took the land east of the Jordan River, and now they're ready to go in and conquer the land of Canaan. So that's it in a nutshell, the book of Numbers, written by Moses, around 1400 BC. And it answers the question, what happened to Israel after they left Egypt on their way to the land of Canaan? And it describes their wilderness wanderings during that period of their history. Thank you for being with us on the Boiling Point podcast in our Old Testament survey.
What wondrous love is this, oh my soul, my soul? What wondrous love is this, oh my soul? What wondrous love is this, here goes the Lord of bliss, to bear the dreadful curse for my soul, to bear the dreadful curse for my soul.